lately and forever. We've been asked a lot of questions around tips for managing debt. So the next 2 weeks, I'm going to share with you some gems, which will first of all sweep any stress off your shoulders and give you a practical debt buster strategy that you can apply to your personal situation to work towards a personal debt-free existence. And yes, I know with every cell in my body that this is possible for you. I've worked with thousands of people through simple debt busting plans, and I have no doubt in my mind that this is possible for you too. So while next week I take you through the full debt buster strategy, this week together I'm going to walk with you through the most important initial step. Before we start, it's important to state that I can't provide financial advice tailored to your personal situation. So what I'm about to share is generic and educational in nature. You will need a paper and pen. So if you need to pause this video and duck off, go for it. Now, as I said, this initial step to the debt buster strategy is incredibly important. It's also simple, and just revising this base knowledge and categorizing your debts can be incredibly transforming, in that instead of your debts being an elephant under the rug and causing a huge amount of stress and often clouded judgment that goes around that stress, what you're doing is putting it out on the table, and this sense of relief that you will get after purely raising your awareness and being in control of your debt rather than your debt in control of you is just huge. So get your piece of paper, and I want you to simply put 3 columns and call them now debt, soon debt, and later debt. So let's first define, before we walk through your debts, let's first define what is now debt, soon debt, and later debt. So now debt tends to be unsecured debt and therefore high interest. So unsecured debt means that there is no asset or guarantor or anything behind that debt that, say if you got into a bit of a pickle, that the bank or financier could sell or draw from in order to get that debt repaid. So there's a level of risk that comes with that, and that's why unsecured debts will tend to come with a higher interest rate, because they come with more debt for the more risk for the lender. So these will run through some examples shortly, but they tend to be credit cards, personal loans, store cards, etc. The next category is soon debt. So soon debt we define as being debt with some security behind it, or secured debt, and therefore comes with a slightly lower interest rate. So some examples of that might be your home loan or a car loan. So again, if you got into a bit of a pickle, the bank or the lender could sell those assets and at least get some of that money back. So because of that safety that debt comes with, they tend to give you a lower interest rate. The third debt is what we call later debt. So this is tends to be debt that is linked to your ability to generate income. And because you're generating income, and that income is over time being taxed, the costs associated with that later debt or investment debt is tax deductible. So some of those later debts include maybe investment loans, business loans, margin loans, which is a loan against shares. And we also put HECS or help debt, student debt in that, and I'll explain why in a moment. Maybe it's not exactly income generating, but it certainly does increase, or you hope it does increase your capacity to earn, and that is always a hugely important part of your wealth creation journey. And it also comes with generally low or no interest, and so that's why we put it in that later category. So let's walk through and and as we go, you can start to categorize, well, what debts do I have and what category or column do they fall into? So for example, we've got in this now debt, we've got credit card, personal loan, store card, and I've included also an overdue fine and overdue bill. The reason is a lot of people ask, oh, well, does my phone bill get included in this strategy? The answer is a phone bill or a utility bill that you are regularly paying doesn't get included as a debt. It only gets included in this activity or as a debt, or in technical terms on your balance sheet as a liability, if it is overdue. So what this essentially is a list of your debts or liabilities at this point in time. So you could almost have today's date written on top of it, because every day, every month, every year, your debt situation, most people's debt situation changes. So what you want to look at is if you have reminders for overdue fines or bills, they get included on this, because that has to be prioritized into your debt buster strategy to get rid of those before they're the ones that often accumulate quite and grow quite fast and can trip us over. So we definitely want to include those in our now debt column. So soon debt, as I mentioned before, is things like a home loan and a car loan. So they're things that, yes, it's technically called personal debt, but as we explained, there is some security and they often come with a lower interest rate. So they're not costing you as much as those higher interest loans. And so start to write down some of your now debts and soon debts. And then if you have also some later debts, so you might have student loans, margin loans, business loans, investment loans, etc. If we haven't given an example, or if you have any questions, just write in the column, in the comments below, and I'll get back to you and make sure that everyone's clear on which column, which category your debts fall into. So the reason why we categorize these debts is going to become incredibly clear in next week's Debt Buster video. But for now, all I want you to do this week is simply write a list under each column. And if you can, go and research exactly how much is owing against that loan, what interest rate you're paying, and if there are any repayment terms associated with that. So for example, some store cards have, interest-free period for the first 3 years, and then you pay, a much higher interest rate. So find out those details and write it all down. And then next week, we're going to look at this and say, okay, how am I going to prioritize these debts in the mathematically cleverest way to bust my debts once and for all? We've also got some great tips on debt consolidation, and we look forward to you having your data in one place. As you've seen here, it doesn't have to be well formatted, just scribbles on a page, because it's all about just getting this information from under the rug and out of your body and off out of your stress and onto a page so you can do something about it. So well done on taking the first step on your debt buster journey, and I'll see you next week.